The door that never should have opened. The sun was just beginning to rise. Over the hills of Los Angeles, warm golden light painted the windows of Keanu Reeves' quiet home. Nestled at the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean, from the outside, it looked like a sanctuary. Inside, it felt like a museum of silence. The walls held more memories than laughter. Keanu had lived alone in this house for the past 8 years, ever since the accident, ever since he lost her, his fiancée, Anna. He had built a wall of stone around his heart, and no one had ever been allowed to step inside. Not truly. He still acted. He still smiled in public. But behind the walls of his home, behind the layers of security, he kept to himself. His staff was small, 2 gardeners, a part-time chef, and 1 live-in maid. Her name was Clara. She was new. She had only been there 3 weeks, young, quiet, and always looking down at the floor when she spoke. And yet, there was something about her that Keanu couldn't quite place. She moved with care, but not the kind that came from training. It was deeper than that, like someone who knew the weight of other people's spaces. She never touched anything that wasn't hers, never lingered in rooms longer than necessary. She often hummed to herself in soft, broken notes that seemed to come from a place of distant sorrow, and she never looked him in the eye. At first, Keanu appreciated that. No questions, no fake smiles, no awkward attempts to get close. But then one morning, something happened that changed everything. He went into his study and noticed the safe was slightly open. He hadn't left it like that. His heart began to pound. It wasn't just a safe. It held more than money or jewelry. Inside were letters, photos, keepsakes from a life that no longer existed. He opened the door fully. Nothing was missing. But something was different. One envelope had been moved. It sat at a different angle than the rest. And for a man like Keanu, who noticed the smallest things on set and in life, that detail screamed louder than a gunshot. He shut the safe, locked it, and sat back in his chair. He stared at the wooden floor beneath his feet. Then he whispered to himself, why would she do that? The next morning, Keanu didn't go to set. He stayed home. He watched. He waited. At 9:42 a.m., Clara entered the study with a feather duster and a blue cloth folded neatly in her hand. She didn't glance at the safe. She didn't even walk near it. But Keanu noticed something else. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dusted the bookshelf. She paused once, just for a second. Her eyes flicked to the corner where the safe was hidden behind a sliding panel. And then she went back to her work. Keanu leaned against the doorframe. His voice was low but steady. You've seen what's inside the safe, haven't you? She froze. Her hand dropped the cloth. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with her back still turned to him, she nodded once. He expected an excuse, a lie, maybe tears. But instead, she whispered, I'm sorry. Keanu stepped closer. Why did you look? Clara turned slowly. She finally met his eyes, and what he saw there stunned him. They were not the eyes of a thief. They were the eyes of someone who had cried silently more times than she could count. Someone who carried her own pain, but still somehow understood his. I wasn't going to take anything, she said quietly. I saw her name on the envelope, Anna. Keanu felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. How do you know that name? Clara looked down. Because I knew her, not personally, but she came to visit the orphanage I grew up in. She gave me a bracelet once. I still wear it. She pulled up her sleeve and revealed a thin, silver band etched with tiny stars. Keanu's single quotes, S knees almost buckled. He had seen that bracelet before. He remembered Anna buying it from a street vendor in Paris. She had said, maybe I'll give it to a little girl someday, but she never told him that she already had. I didn't mean to open the safe, Clara said softly. I was dusting, and the panel slid open by accident. When I saw her name, I just wanted to remember her. I didn't know she was your Anna. Keanu turned away. He didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. How could the universe pull a string so delicate and precise? A girl from an orphanage, a silver bracelet, a safe he never left open. He went back to the safe that night. He opened it and pulled out a letter he had never read. It was addressed to the girl with the stars on her wrist. His hands shook as he opened it, and the words inside changed everything. Dear star girl, you smiled at me without knowing who I was. You thanked me for a gift that cost almost nothing but meant everything. I hope you find kindness in your life, no matter where you go. And if one day, somehow, we cross paths again, know that your smile gave me more hope than you will ever understand. With love. And Keanu sat alone for hours, holding the letter to his chest. The next morning, he didn't lock the safe. He left it open. On purpose. Not to test her, but to honor her. And when Clara walked in, she saw the letter resting on the desk. Her eyes filled with tears before she even read the words. Keanu stood beside her. And for the first time in 8 years, he smiled a real smile. Not because of what was lost, but because of what had been found. The story behind the stars. Clara stood still, her eyes locked on the letter resting on Keanu's desk. The same desk that had once been off limits. The same room where silence used to be louder than any voice. Now, that silence was broken by something neither of them expected. A connection. Keanu didn't say a word. He let her read the letter. He watched her hands shake as her fingers traced Anna's words. She blinked fast, trying not to cry, but a tear escaped and rolled down her cheek anyway. He handed her a tissue without a word. She took it gently, like it was sacred. I don't understand, she finally whispered. How did she even remember me? Keanu's voice was low, because she noticed people, even the ones no one else saw. Clara nodded slowly, her lips trembling. She didn't treat me like I was nothing. She sat down beside me on a broken bench and asked about my dreams. I told her I wanted to be a writer. She said the stars on this bracelet would help guide me. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. Anna used to say the same thing to him. When he felt lost, she'd whisper, "Look up, the stars are still there. They're watching. They're guiding." He had forgotten that. Or maybe he had chosen to forget. Did you ever write? He asked gently. Clara looked down, ashamed. I tried, but life or it didn't let me go far. I left the orphanage when I was 16, got a job cleaning offices, then houses. I sent money back to the other girls whenever I could. Keanu listened closely. Every word from her mouth peeled back layers of something he hadn't felt in years. Compassion, not just for others, but for himself too. Why didn't you tell me before? He asked. Clara shook her head. Who would believe me? I'm just the maid, and you're you. Keanu walked to the window and stared out at the ocean. The morning mist clung to the cliffs like a memory refusing to fade. You're not just anything, he said. You're the girl Anna wrote, too, and that means something. Clara stepped forward. I never wanted to break your trust. I only opened the panel to clean. I didn't even know it was a safe until I saw the letters. I'm sorry. Keanu turned back. I believe you. Those 3 words broke something open inside her. Her shoulders dropped. Her chest rose with a shaky breath. And then she did something unexpected. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook. This is all I have left from that time, she said. It's old, and the pages are worn. But these are my stories, the ones I wrote after she visited. Keanu took it carefully, like it might fall apart in his hands. The cover was made of faded fabric. A broken zipper held it closed. He opened it gently and began to read. The handwriting was small, tight, but full of life. He flipped through pages filled with stories about orphans and stars, about dreams and lonely nights, about hope that refused to die. He looked up, stunned. These are beautiful. Clara smiled shyly. They were just for me. Keanu shook his head. No, they're not just for you anymore. He didn't say anything else. He just placed the notebook on the desk beside Anna's letter. A symbol, a bridge, to voices, now connected by one shared truth. The next few days, in the house were different. There was a quiet warmth between them, not loud, not obvious, but present in the small things. Clara no longer avoided eye contact. Keanu no longer avoided the safe. He read one story every night from her notebook, and then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges, he asked her a question that would change everything. Clara, would you come with me somewhere tomorrow? She looked surprised. Where? There's a place Anna used to love. It's a little bookstore downtown. The owner still remembers her. I think he'd want to meet you. Clara hesitated. Why me? Because Anna would have wanted it, he said. And because your stories deserve to be heard. The next day, they walked through the narrow aisles of the dusty bookstore, surrounded by the smell of old paper and fading ink. The owner, a kind old man named Jules, looked up from behind the counter and gasped softly, "Is that?" Keanu nodded. "This is Clara." Jules smiled, his eyes twinkling. "You have her bracelet." Clara held out her wrist. Jules nodded. "I remember when Anna came in with it. She said she found her star girl. The moment was too much." Clara turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. Jules gently pulled out a box from under the counter. "She left this here," he said. "She told me to keep it for someone special. I think she meant you." Inside the box was a single pen, gold-plated, engraved with the words, "For the one who will write the light." Clara gasped. I can't take this." But Keanu placed the pen in her hand. "You already have." Outside, as they walked back to the car, Clara whispered, "I thought you were testing me, leaving the safe open like that." Keanu looked at her with kind eyes. "I was, but not for the reason you think. I wasn't testing your honesty. I was testing my own heart, to see if it could trust again." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Keanu added, "You passed." But the real surprise hadn't happened yet. That night, Clara left a small envelope on Keanu's desk. Inside was a photo, a girl no older than 6, standing beside Anna, holding a tiny silver bracelet in her hand. Written on the back were 5 words, "She called me her sister." Keanu stared at it for a long time, and just before the tears came again, he whispered to the empty room, "She still does." A secret Anna never told. KeanuReeves sat alone in his study, the photo still in his hand. The edges were worn. The girl in the picture, Clara, was smiling wide with 2 missing teeth, her tiny wrist raised toward the camera to show the silver bracelet. Beside her, Anna knelt down, arms gently around the girl's shoulders. Anna's smile was different in this picture, not the glamorous, red carpet smile the world knew. This one was deeper, personal, the kind of smile that carried meaning. Keanu flipped the photo over again. "She called me her sister." He didn't know what that meant exactly, but he knew it wasn't nothing. The house was quiet. Clara had gone to sleep early after helping organize the study. She had left her notebook open on the desk beside the lamp. The golden pen Anna left her tucked inside as a bookmark. Keanu's single quotes eyes kept drifting back to the safe, the one he hadn't locked in days, the one that now felt less like a vault and more like a doorway. He opened it. There were only a few items inside: Anna's favorite scarf, her old camera, a watch he had given her for their anniversary, and a stack of letters tied together with a thin blue ribbon. He pulled the bundle out and noticed something he hadn't before. One of the envelopes was addressed to him, but it had never been opened. His fingers trembled as he untied the ribbon and pulled out the letter. "Dear Keanu, I know you keep everything locked up, your memories, your pain, your heart, and maybe that's why I'm writing this instead of saying it to your face. You remember the trip I took alone that summer? I told you it was for a retreat. That was a lie. I went to visit a place far from the lights and the cameras, an orphanage. Not because I was doing charity work, but because I was searching. Before my parents died, they told me something that shook my world. They told me I had a half-sister. She was born after they separated, during a time they didn't like to talk about. She was given up for adoption and placed in a home overseas. They tried to find her later, but it was too late. They died before they could. But I kept looking. I couldn't stop. And that summer, I found her. Her name is Clara. Yes, that Clara. I didn't tell her who I was. I couldn't, not yet. She was just a little girl. But something in her eyes told me she had been through more than a child should. So I gave her the bracelet, and I promised myself I'd come back for her. But I never got the chance. If you're reading this, it means something brought her back into your life. Please, please take care of her. She is more than just a girl from my past. She is my family. And maybe, just maybe, she can become yours too. Love always." And Keanu couldn't move. He just sat there, the letter resting on his lap, the words echoing in his head. "Her name is Clara. She's my family." He stood up slowly, walked to the living room, and stared out into the night sky. The stars blinked gently above the ocean. How was this possible? How had the universe, so silent for so long, suddenly begun speaking in ways that shook him to his core? He looked down at the bracelet on Clara's wrist in the photo. She wasn't just someone Anna had helped. She was her sister. And now she was living under his roof. Keanu felt something rising in his chest: grief, wonder, a strange sense of purpose. He had spent so many years hiding from life. But life had found its way back to him, through her. The next morning, Keanu made breakfast himself. It was awkward, clumsy even. He burned the toast and dropped a fork. But he kept going. Clara came into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, surprised to see him there, flipping pancakes. "You cook?" she asked softly. "Badly." He smiled. "But I'm trying." She laughed a little and sat down. "What's the occasion?" Keanu placed a plate in front of her and sat across the table. "I read Anna's letter." Clara froze. "Which one?" "The one addressed to me. The one where she told me who you really are." Clara looked down at her food. Her hands tightened in her lap. "I didn't know until yesterday," she said quietly. "Not for sure." Keanu nodded. "I know. But now we both do." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Clara whispered, "Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she ever come back?" Keanu took a deep breath. She was going to. She just didn't get the time. Clara bit her lip. Her voice cracked. "I waited, every week. I waited by the gate. I thought maybe it was a dream. But then, the bracelet stayed." Keanu reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. "She never stopped thinking about you," he said. "And now, I won't either." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but she nodded. That evening, Keanu did something even more surprising. He called a lawyer. "I want to set up something permanent," he said. "Something in her name, a foundation, for girls like Clara, for orphanages, for stories that haven't been told yet." The lawyer was shocked. "Do you have someone in mind to run it?" Keanu smiled. "Yeah, I think I do." Days passed. The energy in the house changed. Clara started writing again. Really writing. Keanu helped her set up a corner in the study, a tiny writing nook with a soft chair, a secondhand typewriter, and a stack of empty notebooks. He would pass by, hear the keys tapping, and smile. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Because the world didn't know who Clara really was, and part of him wanted to protect her from the spotlight forever, but another part wanted her to shine. Just like Anna did. And then came the call. A reporter, a woman named Julia, who used to be close friends with Anna. She had heard whispers about a girl, about a bracelet, about Keanu reopening a safe that had been locked for years. "Keanu," she said gently, "are the rumors true? Is there something you want to tell the world?" He looked out the window where Clara was sitting under a tree, notebook in hand, her fingers moving with purpose. He thought of Anna. He thought of the letter. And he whispered into the phone, "Yes, but only if Clara's ready." When the world finds out. Sun was setting behind the hills, casting a soft orange glow across Keanu's backyard. Clara sat beneath the old oak tree, her notebook open on her lap, pen dancing across the page. She didn't know it yet, but the world was about to know her name. Inside the house, Keanu hung up the phone with Julia, the reporter. His fingers rested on the receiver a few moments longer. He had promised himself he would never share Anna's story with the public, not because he wanted to keep it for himself, but because it was sacred. Now, for the first time, he felt like sharing it might actually bring healing, not just to him, not just to Clara, but to others too. He stepped outside, hands in his pockets. Clara looked up and smiled. "Another call, Julia," he said. "She wants to do a story about Anna, about you." Clara froze. "Me." She knows something happened. She's pieced things together. The safe, the bracelet, the letter. She doesn't want gossip. She wants truth. Clara shut her notebook slowly. Her voice was soft. "I don't know if I'm ready." Keanu knelt down beside her. "You don't have to be. But if you choose to tell your story, I'll be beside you every step of the way." Clara looked into his eyes. For the first time, she saw no walls, no shadows, just light. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." The interview was set for the following week. Clara wore a simple cream dress. She didn't want makeup or fancy lights. She asked that the interview be done at the bookstore where Anna's pen had been kept all these years. Julia arrived with a small camera crew. She was kind, respectful, and curious in a gentle way. She greeted Clara like an old friend. Even though they had never met, Keanu sat nearby but stayed quiet, letting Clara lead. The first few questions were about her childhood. Clara spoke slowly but clearly. She talked about the orphanage, the loneliness, the hunger that wasn't just for food, but for love. And then she spoke about the woman who came one day, knelt beside her, and gave her a bracelet. She called me her star girl, Clara said. And for the first time, I believed I could shine. When Julia asked her what it meant to find out Anna was her sister, Clara's voice broke. It was like finding a part of me I didn't even know was missing, like a wound I never knew. I had finally began to heal. The interview aired 3 days later, and the internet exploded. Hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag STARGIRL, hashtag Anna's sister, hashtag Clara, single quotes, SS Tory, hashtag Keanu and Clara. Millions of people watched. People cried. People shared their own stories of loss, discovery, and finding hope in unexpected places. But not everyone was kind. Some called it fake. Some said Clara was chasing fame. Some posted her old job listings, mocking her for being just a maid. Keanu saw the comments, his jaw clenched, but he didn't say a word until he saw Clara scrolling through them late one night, tears in her eyes. He walked over, gently closed the laptop, and said, "They don't know who you are, but I do." Clara looked at him, her voice shaking. What if Anna wouldn't have wanted this? Keanu placed Anna's letter in her hand again, the one that ended with the words, "She is my family. She wanted the world to see you," he said, because she already did. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived. It was from a global foundation that supported orphan children and young writers. They had seen Clara's interview. They wanted to award her the KeanuReeves Rising Star Fellowship, named in Anna's memory after her passing. "They want you to speak," Keanu said, reading the letter aloud. Clara's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm not ready for something like that." Keanu smiled. "You've been ready for a long time. You just didn't know it." The event was to be held in New York, a massive ballroom, over 2,000 guests, cameras, reporters, people from all over the world. Clara felt like her knees would give out the moment they landed. Keanu stayed with her the whole time, gently guiding, softly encouraging. When the night arrived, she stood at the podium in front of thousands. For a long moment, she said nothing, just breathed. Then she held up her wrist and showed the silver bracelet. "I was born into silence," she said, "but a woman gave me stars, and when she left this world, she left her light behind, in a safe, in a letter, and in me." People stood. People wept. It wasn't just a speech. It was a homecoming. The next morning, Clara woke up to find Keanu sitting on the hotel balcony with a tray of tea and a notebook in his lap. "What's that?" she asked. He smiled shyly. "I've been writing too. I figured maybe we could tell her story together." Clara sat beside him. "I'd like that." He handed her a second notebook, the same kind he had seen her use months ago. This one had her name on it, in gold. "You're not the maid anymore," he said. Clara looked at him, puzzled. "What am I then?" Keanu took a breath. "Your family." She didn't cry. She just smiled. The kind of smile that said everything. But as their story began to spread, something unexpected happened. A man appeared outside Keanu's gate one morning. He was older, wearing a worn coat and carrying a folder in his hand. The security team called Keanu immediately. "Sir, there's someone here who says he has information about Clara." Keanu rushed to the gate. The man held out the folder. "I worked at the orphanage. I was the record keeper." Keanu took the folder and opened it. Inside were adoption documents. But one name was scribbled out, and beside it, a short handwritten note. "She doesn't know the truth, but she must, soon." Keanu's hands tightened around the paper. He looked up at the man. "What truth?" The man whispered, "Anna wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Asterisk the truth beneath the starched air outside Keanu's home had never felt so heavy. He stood at the gate, staring down at the faded papers in his hands, his fingers trembling around the edges. Beside the old adoption form was a photo, grainy and aged with a date scrawled across the top. The image showed a baby in a hospital crib, her tiny wrist wrapped in a cloth tag. The name was smudged, almost unreadable. But it wasn't the photo or the faded ink that chilled Keanu to the bone. It was the note. She doesn't know the truth, but she must, soon. He looked up at the man again, the former record keeper. The man's eyes were tired, weathered by time and guilt. "Tell me everything," Keanu said, his voice low and sharp. The man swallowed hard. "I worked there when Clara was brought in, but she wasn't left like the others. She was dropped off in secret. No birth certificate, no paperwork, just a handwritten name, Clara, and a bracelet." Keanu's breath hitched. "The bracelet Anna gave her." The man shook his head. "No, the bracelet came later. The one she wore when she arrived was different. It had a tag, initials etched inside, a single letter, R." Keanu frowned. "What does that mean?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out another file. "We believe Clara was part of a sealed adoption case, someone with influence, powerful enough to keep it hidden. And Anna." He paused. "Anna may have known." Keanu felt the ground shift beneath him. "Are you saying Anna knew more than she told me?" "Yes," the man whispered. "And she may have been trying to protect Clara from someone dangerous." Keanu stared at the file. He didn't want to open it, because he already knew whatever was inside. It would change everything. That evening, Clara came home humming quietly. She had just returned from a book club at the bookstore where Anna's story had first been shared. Her notebook was clutched under her arm, and her smile was soft. "Hey," she said, walking into the living room, "I brought your favorite tea." Keanu looked up from the couch. The file was still in his lap, unopened. "Clara," he said gently, "can we talk?" She set the cup down slowly. "Sure. Is something wrong?" Keanu didn't answer right away. He handed her the file. "Someone came today, from your past." She looked down at the manila folder. Confused. "My past?" He nodded. "From the orphanage." Clara sat down beside him. Her fingers hesitated at the corner of the flap. "What's inside?" "Truth," he said, "or at least a version of it." She opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the documents, the photos, the notes. As she read, her face grew pale. Her voice came out as a whisper. "This isn't possible." Keanu sat in silence, letting her process it. She turned to the last page's sealed letter. Her name was written in delicate handwriting on the front. Clara hesitated, then opened it. "Dear Clara, if you're reading this, it means the secret could no longer stay buried. You were not abandoned. You were hidden, not for shame but for protection. Your real mother was Anna's mother too, but your father, he wasn't the same. He was powerful, dangerous, someone Anna feared, someone who would have used you for his own legacy. So Anna made a choice. She kept you safe. She arranged everything quietly, then watched over you from afar. She didn't tell you because she knew it would change you, but she never stopped loving you. You were always her little sister, her star girl. And now, the truth is yours. Please forgive us. Love." A friend from the shadow steers slipped down Clara's face. Her hands trembled as she held the letter against her chest. "So I was never meant to know." Keanu reached for her hand. "Maybe not then, but now you have the strength to carry it." Clara looked up at him. "Who was he?" "My father." Keanu hesitated. "We don't know for sure, just an initial. R, she repeated. "What does that mean?" Keanu took a breath. "I think it means there's still more to uncover." The next few days were quiet. Clara didn't write. She barely spoke, but she walked. Every morning and every evening, she walked the garden paths, sat beneath Anna's tree, and looked up at the sky. Keanu gave her space. He remembered grief like this. He remembered silence that hurt more than words. But on the fourth morning, she came into the study, holding her notebook. "I want to tell the whole story," she said. "Not just mine, Anna's, our mother's, even the parts that hurt." Keanu nodded. "You sure?" She smiled softly. "You once told me I was the girl Anna wrote to. Now, I want to write back. Together, they began to craft a memoir. Clara wrote with raw honesty about the orphanage, the letter, the bracelet, and the man she never knew. Keanu added chapters of his own, not as a celebrity, but as someone who loved and lost Anna too. Publishers fought for the rights before it was even done. But Clara had one condition: no glamour. She said, no drama, just truth. The title came easily, The Girl with the Bracelet. And as the pages took shape, so did Clara's voice. Stronger, clearer, hers. But just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, another letter arrived. This one was postmarked from overseas. No return address, no name. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a man. Tall, suited, cold eyes, and a message on the back: do not look for him. He is looking for you. Keanu single quotes S hands clenched the photo. Clara stared at it, her face pale. Is this him? She asked. Keanu didn't answer, because in his gut, he already knew. The man with the initial R was not a memory. He was real, and he was coming. The face behind the letter. If wind howled outside Keanu Reeves's home, cold and sharp like the truth that had just arrived at their doorstep. On the table lay the photograph. A man in a tailored black suit stood in front of an embassy building. His jaw was sharp, his posture stiff, and his eyes soulless. The writing on the back had only 5 words, but it had shaken them both to their core. Do not look for him. He is looking for you. Clara sat at the edge of the couch, staring at the picture. Her hands were clenched, her bracelet digging into her wrist like a reminder of the past she never asked for. Keanu stood nearby, arms crossed, thinking, not like an actor or a writer, but like a man preparing for something dangerous, something final. We need to find out who he is, Clara whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear. We will, Keanu replied, but we do it safely. You don't face this alone. Clara looked up, eyes glistening. He could be my father, the man Anna protected me from. What if he wants something now? Keanu's face hardened. Then he'll get nothing. The next day, Keanu used his contacts to trace the photo. He sent it to a trusted friend in London, a security consultant, who used to work in government intelligence. Within 24 hours, the name came back. Richard Ashton, the voice on the call said. British diplomat, now retired, known for shady business under the radar. Had ties to adoption agencies in the 90s. Nothing provable. Everything clean on paper, but something always felt off. Keanu's voice was calm but cold. Is there proof he's connected to Clara? A pause, only one thing. A sealed case from a now closed orphanage in Romania. Mother listed as a U.S. citizen. Father unknown. Birth name, Clara Ashton. Keanu's breath caught. Ashton. He looked toward the hallway where Clara had just gone to sleep. Thank you, he said, and hung up. The next morning, Keanu prepared breakfast again. He placed a new cup of tea on the table, just how Clara liked it. She entered quietly, still in her robe, her eyes showing the weight of the last few days. I know his name, Keanu said gently. Clara sat down slowly. Who? Richard Ashton. Clara blinked. So it's true. He's we don't know for sure. Keanu interrupted. But he was there. He was involved. And the orphanage listed you under his name. She stared down at her tea. Why now? Why come looking for me after all this time? Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out Anna's letter again. The one with her final plea. Please take care of her. She is more than just a girl from my past. She is my family. Double quotes, maybe because you're not invisible anymore. He said, the world sees you now. And maybe that makes him nervous. Clara looked up. I don't want anything from him. Not his name, not his money, not his approval. Then let's make sure he knows that, Keanu said. They flew to New York 3 days later, where Richard Ashton was attending a private gala hosted by international leaders and philanthropic organizations. Clara wore a modest dress, no jewelry, but the bracelet. Keanu walked beside her, dressed in black, silent but steady. Cameras flashed when they entered. Whispers followed them across the room. And then, across the crowd, he appeared. Older now, but unmistakable. Richard Ashton. He spotted Clara instantly. His eyes narrowed, and he began walking toward her with a faint, calculated smile. My dear, he said, stopping just feet away. I see the world has finally found you. Clara stood tall. Her voice didn't shake. Did you think I wouldn't find out who you were? Richard raised a brow. I thought you'd be too grateful to ask. Keanu stepped forward, protective. She doesn't owe you anything. Richard chuckled softly. And who are you in all this, family? Keanu said, the kind that doesn't walk away. Richard's smile faded. Clara reached into her purse and pulled out the original letter, the one from the orphanage record keeper. She handed it to him. This is the only thing tying you to me. And now I know. You tried to bury me. But Anna gave me a voice. And now the world hears it. Richard looked at the letter, then at her. You don't know what you're giving up. Clara shook her head. I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing who I am. I choose Anna. I choose truth. I choose peace. A crowd had gathered now, people listening, some recording. Richard realized it too late. The cameras were on. The eyes were watching Dot, and for the first time, the powerful man looked small. Clara turned her back and walked away. Keanu followed, never looking back. 2 weeks later, Clara sat on a stage in Los Angeles. She held a copy of her book, The Girl with the Bracelet, in her hands. It had just hit #1 on every major bestseller list. The host leaned into the mic and asked, So, Clara, what would you say to the man who tried to erase you? Clara smiled gently. Thank you, she said, not for what you did, but for reminding me that sometimes the loudest silence is the one we break ourselves. I was once hidden, now I am seen, and I owe that not to blood, but to love. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. Keanu stood backstage, tears in his eyes, not because he had saved her, but because she had saved herself. Later that night, as they sat together watching the stars from his backyard, Clara spoke softly. Do you think Anna would be proud? Keanu smiled, placing an arm around her shoulder. I think Anna is watching every moment, and I think she's whispering, shine, star girl, shine. And for the first time in a long time, beneath a sky full of light, they both believed it.